All right, next on our agenda, we have Accent on Academics. Dr. Shandor, I'll now let you share with us about tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson and board members. This month's presentation will be done by Queens Lake Middle School. For this evening's Accent on Academics, Virginia Institute of Marine Science, or VIMS, Chesapeake Bay Field Experiences will be presented by Queens Lake Middle School. This month's presentation focuses on the VIMS Chesapeake Bay Field Experiences and how students at Queens Lake Middle School work to make a difference in the health of our local Chesapeake Bay watershed. Mr. Scott Meadows, principal of Queens Lake Middle, will now introduce tonight's presentation.
Get my posse with me. Thank you, Dr. Shandor, members of the board. In keeping with York County's commitment to excellence in education, I am excited and very proud to be here this evening introducing a presentation which I think you will all enjoy, regardless of my bias. If we all think back to our school days and try to recall a few of our most memorable learning experiences, odds are thoughts about your favorite worksheet would not top the list. I would wager that the most positive experiences were in fact ones that connected learning to the real world, which is what the VIMS Chesapeake Bay field trips are all about. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Jamie Buckley, Queens Lake science teacher, along with Princess Adlawan and Logan Richardson, both current Queens Lake students. Also joining the group tonight is Mr. Will Bennett, our AETF, who is here to provide both technical and moral support.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing for us to be here this evening. Queens Lake Middle School was invited to participate in classroom visits and a field experience funded by a Noah Bay Watershed Education and Training, or BWET, grant in 2012. I can vividly remember our initial meeting with Sarah Nuss from the Chesapeake Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, or CBNER. Sarah explained all the hands-on experiences and skills that students would be using during this meaningful watershed experience at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, or VIMS, at Gloucester Point. Although my initial reaction was excitement, I found myself having some concerns and questions, like would all of my students listen and follow safety guidelines for this unique experience? And I would be spending a lot of time outside of the classroom with each of the classes. So how would my students be impacted with me being out of the room? However, after that initial hesitation, I can honestly say hands down that this has been the best educational experience that I have ever been able to provide my students. So much so that after the initial grant had ended, after our first year, we decided to change our annual 7th grade museum field trip to keep this experience at VIMS at Gloucester Point. Over the past 3 years, the York County BWET grant has provided all 7th grade York County schools an opportunity to have similar field experiences through this school year. This meaningful watershed experience, coupled with classroom activities, has allowed us to have many classroom discussions and research opportunities to find ways that we as members of our local community can help the Chesapeake Bay and its watershed. Today, I have brought 2 of my students from last year that would like to share their experiences with you, and Logan will start us out.
Hello. In March 2017, Mrs. Buckley provided us with a permission slip for the VIMS field trip in April. We were excited to hear about this hands-on experience finding organisms in the York River. We were even more excited to hear about how there would be a water activity and a Twitter activity following. Mrs. Buckley shared with us an email about how a few teachers at VIMS wanted others to contact elected officials concerning how there were budget cuts to CBNER. They asked us to reach out to elected officials on these educational watershed experience so that we can continue this outreach experience. We realized we were very lucky to get to go on this amazing field trip, and so we wanted to make the most of it. In class, Mrs. Buckley challenged us to think about what we could do as a class to help preserve this watershed experience. She gave us a driving question, as shown: how can we make a difference to improve the health of our local Chesapeake Bay watershed? We created a list of questions we thought needed to be answered in order to create a realistic solution. And at the end, we had a total of over 60 questions. We divided all of our questions into 3 main topics, as shown, and then in our groups, we researched answers to each of these questions we had asked. Our goal was to find as many answers as possible so that we could provide people with meaningful information on Twitter. And I really enjoyed this field trip, had a great time, and hope this grant continues for other students. And now Princess will share the next part. Thank you.
Hi, our VIMS field trip was divided into 2 parts and studied different habitats of the Chesapeake Bay. We collected estuarine species and studied water quality. We used seining nets and single dip nets to collect the organisms in the York River. After we collected them, we kept 1 example of each type of organism in a tank from VIMS. That tank was used to name and study the samplings. We found fish, crabs, jellyfish, snails, eels, shrimp, and grass. But the best part of the trip for me was getting to actually handle the oysters and see what was living inside it. Metal cages containing empty oyster cells are placed in the York River for 6 months to a year at a time. Then they pull the cages for us to study the oyster shells in the lab. We had the opportunity to observe organisms in the oyster cells with microscopes. We were able to find the names of the organisms we observed using a dichotomous key and research interesting facts about them using lab guides at our tables. After the field trip activities, we talked about environmental concerns, and we had the chance to ask the instructors at VIMS the questions that we were unable to find in our research. Our life science classes met after the trip, and we wanted to raise awareness. We got parent permission to create Twitter messages to spread the word about the Chesapeake Bay watershed. These messages were informed people about the VIMS field trip and research we had conducted. We hope to reach out to those who make decisions about our future funding of the CB NEAR partnerships with schools like Queens Lake. And this has been the best field trip for me because I'm a visual learner, and just to have the opportunity to go to this field trip was awesome. So thank you.
We have a short slideshow that we would like to share with you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Nuss, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the Chesapeake Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve in Virginia, which is located at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. We are a state-federal partnership between NOAA and the College of William & Mary, and the Education Department provides opportunities for students, teachers, and the general public to get out and explore the Chesapeake Bay. They visited VIMS for their field experience collecting animals and water quality data. And as a reflection, the students at Queens Lake Middle School created a Twitter campaign. This Twitter campaign allowed the students to share what they learned and also what they wanted to do to help the Chesapeake Bay. This is one of the most creative reflections that we've ever seen from our students and our teachers, and we always use it as a model when we're teaching other teachers how to do MeWes.
I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Sarah Nust, and she was part of our slideshow today. Kristen Sharp is also here from the Chesapeake Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve located at VIMS at Gloucester Point. Although the future, as far as the funding for these field experiences, is uncertain at this time, it is our hope to have a continued partnership with CB NEAR at VIMS. We all know what an incredibly important resource the Chesapeake Bay and its surrounding land is to our region. Opportunities like the ones that we have had with our students at Queens Lake allow them to connect with their local environment and help them become more involved in their local community. We wish to continue to inspire, educate, and be able to provide these hands-on field experiences to our school so that students may in turn pass on what they have learned and have a positive impact on our environment. Thank you so much.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah, just first I had to look up to see if it was like Bruton High School students presenting this evening, because the way y'all presented was top notch. I mean, you know your subject matter. You actually you did have a good time, and you walked away with a lot of good information. These kind of programs, we got hidden gems within our community sometimes. VIMS is one of those places that just offers so much to its surrounding communities that students can go in and just learn so much. They can jumpstart a career thought, possibly of a biologist or other things maybe, or a future student at William & Mary. You just never know what these little programs can bring out, but great job. I mean, top notch.
And I just want to say congratulations for a great program. Now, will each student, each class just made one trip?
Yes, they did.
Okay, fantastic.
Wonderful. Was it a lot of fun? Learned a lot?
Yeah.
I'm so happy. I'll echo what Mark was saying, that we're utilizing the resources we have right here in VIMS. Is such a wonderful, incredible program, and I'm very glad that we're taking advantage of that and teach these kids.
I guess lastly, I'd like to thank the presenters, especially Princess and Logan, Ms. Buckley, Mr. Meadows, and more especially to thank VIMS for providing this program. I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful program. So thank you again.